Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're talking about Bakugan. This is a franchise that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I will be making another video more in depth on sort of the history of Bakugan, which is sort of the planned video that I had talking about this. But Bakugan is doing a reboot, and I kind of wanted to talk about the direction they're taking and kind of what I see as the problem with Bakugan. And it's a problem that they've had for a while. So Bakugan, if you're not familiar with them, I imagine most of you are, but if you're not familiar, they're essentially little marbles that transform into animals, different creatures. They've got a little number on them, which is like a power indicator. You try to land them on one of these, which is a gate card. If you land a 2 Bakugan on the gate card, you get a card. Or this is the legacy rules anyway. Land 2 of your Bakugan on a card, you get the card. That's a point. If an enemy is on one and you land on it, you flip it, and then you've got, some numbers on here that will add to your power. Whichever one has the highest power gets a point. Some of the older cards and stuff would have text at the bottom with different effects. That's getting into the rules and the different variations of the game is a whole other video. I'll go in more depth on that in another video, but basic principle is you try to get points. You can also additionally knock off the opponent to try to take over the card as well. So they're cool. They look neat. They're like design-wise, I think these are super cool when they first came out. Around the time of Metal Fight, for those of you guys who are watching this that are already on my channel, familiar with Beyblade. Bakugan came out around the time that Metal Fight was launching, in Japan, I think, at least. Might have been another year or something after the launch of Bakugan that Metal Fight actually hit shelves in America. Not 100% sure, but they're cool. They're neat little toys. There's a lot of engineering that's going on in order to make these things function. They turn into a tiny little ball, and they have to stay durable enough for these to not shatter when they spring apart. That's cool. That's neat. And then they're spring loaded, so when they just pop out when they hit the card. Very cool. But the issue is that Bakugan doesn't know what it's doing with the toy line, with the game. So the original series, most people consider to be pretty good comparatively in the scope of the Bakugan world. I would say that series is probably the best as far as the actual show goes. Toy line, not so much, I don't think. I'm sure some people are nostalgic for some of the designs, but actual, like, complexity-wise, durability-wise, definitely not the best, especially like Gen 1. With the reboot, they came along, brought back some old characters in name mostly, some of them in design as well, but very much marketed towards a younger audience. But they did introduce a TCG, which involved like a full deck of cards. Unfortunately, that got dropped sort of around when COVID hit. So I can't really blame them for that. A lot of card shops were shutting down. There's not a lot of organized play. And unfortunately, Bakugan is one of those games that would take some work to simulate through a video game. And I don't think something that they wanted to invest in. They did produce a video game, but the quality was questionable. It's not a great game. They are doing another reboot right now. It's been probably, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years or something since the reboot came out. So I can understand them wanting to reboot as the previous generation is now aging out of Bakugan. They're trying to cater to a newer audience, so it makes sense to reboot. A lot of series do that. Every few years they'll add a new character, a new main character, take a break, bring it back. Pretty common to cater towards a new audience. You don't want to isolate any newcomers because the series is on its 10th season and nobody, none of the new kids know what the heck's going on. So from the perspective of that, totally makes sense. My issue is the game. There's no longer the TCG aspect. The legacy rules have largely been abandoned. They're adding in new gameplay elements, which is great to spice up the game, but they're turning Bakugan into this sort of weird Beyblade spin-off, almost. Like, they're still keeping the sort of like gate card element of it, but they have an arena, and the Bakugan are now launched with a ripcord, which takes away the original inspiration from Bakugan, which is marble, the game of marbles. And now it's no longer that. Now it's this weird Beyblade thing. The issue, though, is that the reason why Beyblade works the way it does is because there's different typings and different parts that actually affect the performance of the Beyblade. Beyblades with very different parts are going to perform very differently. This tip is going to perform way different than this one. The amount of metal that's in this is much heavier. The center of gravity, it's all very different. But that, from my understanding, looking at these, that's not going to be the case. Like, there's no rubber tips on these. There's no metal sharp tips. In order for a spinning top game to have any sort of real gameplay that feels like it's not completely up to chance, you have to have different tips for different tactics. Right now, it's just launching the Bakugan into a stadium and hoping that it lands on the card you want it to. But if there's no rubber tip, if there's no traditional ridge for the stadium, if there's no real strategy to launching it, you're just ripping it and hoping it lands somewhere, then the gameplay is reduced to chance. There's no strategy to it, and that's the issue that I think Bakugan is having. I'm not opposed to the idea. I think the concept is fine. I think it's totally fine for them to introduce the ripcord thing, to move into a different sort of gameplay element. Totally fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's good that they're experimenting with different things. However, if they're going to try to enter into the sort of spinning battle toy thing, they need to look at the engineering of the Bakugan and actually make a sort of viable strategy. Otherwise, the game just falls flat. Really young kids, they'll probably be fine with it, and that's I'm assuming that's the major demographic. But the problem is they keep going back and forth. So with last gen, they tried to cater the game to make it accessible for older audiences as well, so legacy audience. So they had a legacy gameplay, where simplified gameplay for kids to play with the reboot Bakugan or whatever, and then they had this full TCG thing going on for older audiences, which is great. People were, I think, really receptive, but that got dropped, and now we're going into another reboot, which completely abandons the traditional gameplay altogether, it seems like. I think they can still be launched traditionally, but when the core gameplay is now this spinning gimmick, why would you? So I'm concerned the direction that they're going. I'm hopeful that the series will be good, but looking at the designs as far as the engineering goes for the Bakugan 2, that's another issue. When you have these things impacting each other, you can only get so creative with the designs of these before it becomes a fragility issue, because these obviously are not designed for continuous impact while these are spinning, right? So this is Bakutech. These are designed to, when they're rolled up, designed to hit another Bakugan. And then others are designed to deflect. Japanese exclusive series called Bakutech. And they put a lot of thought into the engineering on these. So the idea with Bakutech was that the main goal was impact, right? So when you're rolling these. So if you were to roll this guy out, this is a defensive Bakugan. It's got a very large surface area on this gate card. It's kind of sloped upwards. So if you're to roll this guy towards this at a high speed, the idea is that it's just going to deflect off. It's got a lot of this surface area, so you can keep a Bakugan off of this card. So thought was put into this. But looking at the designs for the current generation, or the new reboot, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of thought put into the design as far as the actual gameplay goes. As far as actual strategy, it doesn't look like there's any variation. It's just, what can we stick on this ball that's not going to explode off when they come into contact with each other while they're spinning? But they've created an issue with themselves where now we've gone from more complex designs. So here is one of the last reboots or whatever. We've gone from more complex designs to very simplified designs, because if this is spinning, you've got fragility issues with these heads, with these wings, and these can break off. And that's a problem. So now they're limiting themselves in what they can do design-wise. So more thought has to be put into keeping these things from breaking, and at the same time they're reducing the actual gameplay element. I'm sure they feel like they're expanding it, but I don't think they're looking at this from the perspective of like maybe a toy line that has already done this, which would be Beyblade, and they've done it very successfully. So I don't know, maybe it'll be good. I'm hopeful. I think it's cool that they're branching out. I think that they're trying to take a step forward, but they're taking 2 steps back at the same time. Like, it's great to branch out, but they're limiting themselves with what they can do. And it feels like what they think is an added gimmick or an added gameplay element is just reducing it backwards to RNG. Because now you've taken the skill of rolling the Bakugan and trying to hit that card, kind of like an accuracy thing, almost like pool, right? You're taking that element away and you're introducing this ripcord element, which doesn't have a strategy. It's just launch it and hope it lands somewhere. So that's my thoughts. I just wanted to rant about it for a little bit. I may cover the new gen for a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked about it on my channel, but I do like Bakugan. I think they're cool from an engineering perspective. I didn't care for the anime, for the reboot at all. I'm definitely not the demographic. Definitely not not accessible to the different audiences. Very much a single demographic that is catered towards. I guess we'll just have to see the direction that they go. But I don't know, if you guys want to see content about Bakugan on the channel, let me know. Maybe I'll check it out as the stuff starts to hit shelves. Again, I do plan on covering doing kind of a history video on Bakugan, just as part of my sideline projects. I've done Crush Gear now, I've done Beat 'em On, I've done the history of Beyblade. Bakugan's definitely one of those that I want to take a look at. Specifically, Bakutech I think is really interesting, as it was the Japanese exclusive line. So that'll be coming at some point. Anyway, again, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. And again, let me know what you think down in the comments of me potentially covering Bakugan stuff. I don't know. It's on the table.